emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and,
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 671.IS5714, certificate number 40991, Jersey Barriers.
Here's something I don't know about you. Have you ever been in a car accident?
Yes. Let me think.
Has anybody in the audience ever been hit by a car?
What is that? Oh. Most recently, some woman changed lanes into me on Capitol Hill, but this was still like almost a decade ago.
Dent you?
Dented me. My car was drivable. Hers was not. But she was so angry, like...
She was angry.
Yeah. She was like, well, I can't go anywhere. Where am I supposed to go? And I'm thinking, but do not say, then don't merge into cars that are already there. And that won't happen.
That's quite a zinger.
But I did not say that.
So she was mad at you because she couldn't drive?
She seemed mad at everyone, and I was there.
I see.
I was there. But I don't think her insurance company or mine thought I had anything to do with it. So
Off you went.
But it is kind of day ruining. Like, even if you're, I don't know if I've told this story before. I was driving downtown. I picked up Mindy and she hopped in and she said, I think I might have told this before. She said, well, what do you think? Because she just had her hair cut. And I turned to look at her hair. And as I'm rolling forward, the people right in front of us slam on their brakes because there's somebody in the crosswalk. And I roll into their bumper. Bump. And there was both cars were fine. There was not even a dent, but they were very flummoxed because, any car accident is stressful, And I think they were particularly vulnerable to that kind of thing because they were like, but I was just in a car accident. I was just in a car accident, They were kind of sounding a little...
Like they were having a PTSD moment?
Yeah, like a little scattershot. And then I think maybe they found out who I was because I got served, because their insurance company and mine refused to pay out for whatever neck injury they were claiming. And so they came to me and I had to go to the first deposition of my life.
No kidding.
It was just in a conference room in a Seattle skyscraper. And I don't think the would-be plaintiff was there, but her attorney was. And I wasn't worried because... We all have car insurance, and I think everyone can see there was
visible damage.
There was not even a dent on the car, and just somebody who has a lot of free time in her life. And the guy asks me to explain what happened, and I said, and I turned to look, rolling forward, I turned to look at my wife's new haircut, and when she slammed on the brakes because of the pedestrians, I rolled into her bumper. And the attorney looks at me, and maybe he's been waiting his whole career for this. He says, well, Mr. Jennings, I'd like to ask you, and remember, you are under oath here. How did your wife's hair look?
Oh, so good.
Pretty good.
So good. And what did you say? Mindy wasn't there. Could have said anything.
But it's in the court record.
Oh, of course.
Mindy could find out.
You were like, it looked amazing.
It looked amazing.
So cute.
So I've never had like a traumatic car accident. I think. I've had a traumatic near accident.
What was that?
Driving on I-15 through Salt Lake City in my old Toyota Corolla. Suddenly there was a steering thing where it felt like there was no power steering.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't working. And I was like,
Could it have been that the power steering stopped working?
Suddenly, my perception is suddenly it cocomes back, and now I've oversteered.
Oh.
And we actually were going fast enough that we did a 360.
You did?
On the interstate, crossing 3 or 4 lanes.
Was it icy, or were you just
We were just Tokyo Drift,
Yeah.
or Kaysville Drift or whatever. And in trying to, I had the car looked at, trying to figure out what was up with the steering, and the internet had told me that people sometimes perceive that this is happening, and it's really just oversteering.
Whoa.
But I would swear that we suddenly, for a good 3 or 4 seconds, had no steering. And I was panicking, and then it came back.
Wow.
And that's scarier than any accident I've had because, you don't want to go the wrong way on an interstate and crossing 3 or 4 lanes.
Typically, no.
I don't recommend it.
Have you ever seen a bad accident?
I've seen a death.
You have?
Yeah.
You saw it actually happen, or you saw the aftermath?
I saw both. Wow. Driving through southern Idaho, I think, we saw a tractor trailer tip over coming at us the other way.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
That's something, yeah. And you can't really believe what you're seeing because, everything is it's a quiet, normal day. It's like a Fall of Icarus moment where me and my wife were like, did you see that? That truck wasn't supposed to tip over into that ditch, right? And we pulled over, even though we were going the wrong way. And it's a very desolate stretch of highway, but a few other people had seen it, were coming as well. So there was a pretty good crowd by the time I got there. But I think most of the damage had been on the side that the driver was on, and he was in a bad way.
Oh, no.
And it was clear from the people that were trying to help. Some people knew CPR and were trying to help it, but of course, obviously you can't move him out of the cab.
Yeah.
Everybody had called, people were on, emergency services were on the way, but the guy was like no longer as responsive as he had been when we got there. And I didn't know what to do. There were too many people.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not Mr. All right, here's what we're going to do. You go up to, and I realized nobody was up on the highway, just to warn anybody or to flag over motorists. Cause the truck's now down in a ditch, tractor trailer's down in a ditch. So I went up to the highway to try to tell emergency services where we were. And I later, absent anything else to do, we eventually took off and continued on our way. Now a less fun road trip. And the next day I looked it up and the guy had died.
Oh, wow.
He did not make it to the hospital.
That's terrible.
I know. Have you ever seen what's the worst accident you've ever seen? It was really kind of awful. It's the only violence you can really see without being in a war zone is you can see a terrible car accident just about. There might be one anytime, any day,
Yeah, yeah.
It's the only violence that's accessible to, middle-class America on a daily basis.
Yeah, that isn't gun violence or domestic violence.
Right, yeah, exactly.
People fighting in a bar.
Besides, yeah, I guess I don't live a world that has bar fights, so I'm aware, and I don't live in a world that has domestic violence. So I'm, I think about my kids at school, but that's about it.
Yeah. No, I've seen a lot of accidents, terrible accidents. I've been in more car wrecks than I can count.
As a driver?
In all ways, as a driver, as a passenger, as an innocent driver, as a very guilty driver. So yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where there is a tremendous gulf between the two of our experiences that we can attribute to me having been irresponsible and living somewhat in a fringe state.
But everybody's a bad driver for years,
Right.
Even without the benefit of any substances.
But
I was a terrible driver at 20.
The fact that you have been in less than zero, or maybe let's say zero, let's have it even out at 0 car accidents, and that I have been in.
What's your number?
I mean, if you only counted accidents where the car was damaged enough that it needed repair, it's still going to be in the dozens.
Oh, wow.
I mean, if you just talk about if you talk about accidents where the car was totaled, I could say that was 10. I've been in 10 car totaling accidents, including rollovers and accidents where the car caught on fire.
Jeez.
And always
Rollovers.
always walked away.
Seatbelt.
One rollover where we were both covered with gasoline. Gas was pouring into the overturned vehicle.
In that case, maybe you shouldn't walk away. Like from that one, maybe you should run away.
In fact, I had to, because my door was so crushed I couldn't get out it. I had to get out over the other guy, and he was dawdling.
I thought you were going to say he was dead.
He was not dead.
I have never been more relieved to hear the word dawdling.
He was so shocked by being upside down that he was like turning off the stereo and stuff. He was like monkeying with stuff because he was so in shock.
Right.
And I was like, move your ass. Like we're also covered with gas.
That rhymes.
Move your ass. We're covered with gas. And he got the picture.
Did you ever write a song?
No.
Move your ass. We're covered with
He
gas.
was smaller than I was, and I think he understood that he was the plug in my champagne bottle, and I was going out, and I was going to bring him with me.
A little spoon.
And I did. I think I did. As I moved, I was also carrying him. You know, there were only one set of footprints.
That's right. I don't want to use the word hero, because apparently you've you've totaled 10 cars somehow.
It's not, and that's the thing. Half the time, it wasn't my fault at all.
I mean, whether or not the car is
More than half
totaled
the time.
is directly proportional to the price of the car. So when we were young and driving beaters, it's a lot easier to total a car.
Good point. The last car I was in that was totaled was just 2 years ago. And it was because, although the car wasn't fixable, it also was only worth $8,000.
It's much easier to total cars these days. Like the last car that I had totaled, my son was driving my EV and got T-boned by, as it turned out, a friend. It wasn't his fault. You know, some dumb team driver T-boned him at an intersection, I think ran a stop sign, and then Dylan discovered it. He knew the kid.
You're saying that Dylan's been in more car wrecks than you have?
No, probably not.
Well, you've never been in a car that was totaled, have you?
Not in a road accident.
Yeah.
No. I mean,
just totaled from like spilled bong water?
Well, I once hit an axle on a pillar in a parking garage.
Oh.
It is an accident. It's the world's dumbest kind of accident.
Yeah.
But I guess with an EV, like if you do something to the axle, the car looked fine. I was like, well, I can drive out of here. And it turned out, I'm getting a check from the insurance company. That car is done. But yeah, it's just today's cars, anything will total them, really.
Well, the state, the government.
You don't mean Washington State, you mean the establishment?
Washington State also, but the establishment, the government, has a vested interest in public safety. And we see it manifest in a lot of ways. That's why it's, for instance, illegal to kill someone.
That's why Cybertruck is illegal?
It's not just that God doesn't want you to kill other people. It's also the state takes great pains to keep you from killing other people.
They want to, because we all want to live in a state where nobody's killing other people.
Exactly. That's right. It's a cooperation. And, there have always been, there's always been traffic.
Is that true?
Horses and carts and people. And
I do not believe there's always been traffic.
Sure.
I read Clan of the Cave Bear. Like Buffalo, is that traffic?
Let's say you have 4 people that are
trying to get in the cave at once.
Well, or 4 people that are going up a mountain.
Yeah.
And then here come 4 people coming down a mountain, and there's a place between 2 big rocks where the road narrows. Eventually, you're going to have traffic.
We will never know the first time some hominid was like, "Come on, in or out."
Let's go.
Are you going in the cave?
Yeah, the first one that was like passing on your left.
Yeah,
because there's a slow hominid and then a fast hominid.
Always, it's probably a Neanderthal like in the middle of the road, and some Homo sapiens is like, come on.
Move it.
Homo erectus coming through.
But, I'm sure there were, this is something that that maybe I should research for Omnibus, but what were the Roman traffic laws? There were Roman traffic laws. I know to some extent that certain kinds of traffic were pushed to the outside. There were some traffic took precedence. Right, like Caesar on his bicycle or whatever is going to get a little bit of an escort.
I think if you're in a toga, you don't want to be on a bicycle.
Well, that's how you're living. But we're from a cold climate.
That's true. I guess we did that whole entry on later traffic regulations. You know, the direction of travel in. We did the show on the day that Sweden changed from driving on the left to driving on the right, and it's all bound up with whether France or England, whether their road systems were for horses or which side you would high five the other cart. I can't remember how this worked.
Yeah, it's all about making high fiving easier.
Exactly. The French love a good high five.
High
sync.
The earliest traffic, the earliest guardrails to go up, maybe not surprisingly. I mean, it's fairly ancient that there would be some sort of fence or some sort of barrier that would keep you from falling off a cliff, say, for instance.
I don't even know. The Alps?
Yeah. I mean, when they found Gertzy or whatever his name was, he had a bag full of seeds, some leather shoes, and he was leaning over a guardrail.
He had his phone out for a selfie.
But it definitely became an issue in the 20th century after cars became more. The roads now were accommodating cars.
Do you think there even were barriers for horse carts?
Yeah, there were. I mean, if you think about
just the lighting's not good, if nothing else. So you don't want somebody just plunging over a turn in the dark.
Often you see the first kind of proto guardrail is on the side of a bridge, because a bridge is a place where it's not. There's not even an embankment to roll down.
If you get jostled,
you're off the side, right? And so just that as an example, if you put a guardrail on either side of a bridge, there are going to be other places where, as you're building the road, you're going to think, well, this is a drop off here, and we'll put a little bit of a thing to keep the horses going, right? But in terms of a systematized sense of this, these are now roads. Vehicles are traveling at speeds where. And vehicles have a tendency to go out of control.
Right, a horse could get spooked.
Yeah,
and they're tall and tippy in a way that a lot of today's cars are not allowed to be.
That it's not a private enterprise thing. It's a thing where states get involved and say, we need to make this particular stretch of road. It usually starts with a stretch of road. Like, we need to have there be something that keeps people from, for instance, falling into this lake of fire.
A fen.
Yeah.
Let's say there's a fen. Don't you think this is the state only gets involved after a certain number of carts have fallen have
disappeared into a peat bog?
Yeah, into the fen.
Yeah, maybe so.
You lose 4 carts and then the town is like, we should fence in yon hairpin turn. How many dumb Kevins go over the edge before you have to put up a barrier?
Yeah, it's got to be a lot. And a picket fence is basically, any kind of fence is essentially a guardrail of a kind.
Right, but in human history, the fence has usually been land ownership, right? Not public safety.
Right. Hedgerow does multiple kind of jobs, right? It keeps the cows in. It keeps the cow rustlers out.
It keeps the bustles in and the rustlers out, right? You got bustlers
in the hedgerows,
and you got rustlers.
And you got rustlers.
You want the bustlers, you don't want the rustlers.
See?
It all comes together.
I feel like that's right. So it wouldn't have been unfamiliar to see any kind of fencing, but the idea of it being purpose-built for the roads is kind of a 20th century evolution. And as you can imagine, it was pretty ad hoc, and the first impulse, I guess, is to put up cable, right? To put posts like fence posts along a stretch of road and string a cable between them as a kind of it's almost like a net, right? If a car's going to go off the road,
if you're a trapeze artist,
we're going to catch it. Right, we're going to catch it in a rope. But it was, I think, pretty quickly understood that if you build a thing to stop a car, you're basically going to kill the occupants of the car
because you're stopping it too abruptly.
Yeah, that any addition to the roadside a safety addition, is in effect a new obstacle.
That's very wise.
Yeah, the only the best possible outcome for a car going off the road is that it meandered down a garden slope and come to a rest in a verdant valley.
And then birds kind of circle around the driver's head.
And then you get it started and you go back up the hill and on your way. So traffic safety people have understood from the very beginning that any kind of roadside safety feature
cannot be a brick wall.
It not only can't be a brick wall, but even the best designs, what you're doing is you're adding a new complication to the environment. And it is, in and of itself, the safety feature is also a hazard. So the only
Whatever
time
you hit could go flying and hit somebody else,
or the
right?
car can fly over, or anything can happen. You're giving the car something to hit.
Yeah.
And so the only time you should do it is if that is better than the alternative.
Like if it's a big marshmallow.
If it's a big marshmallow, if you're driving past a giant marshmallow farm, don't put up a guardrail.
Yeah.
Because the cars will hit the marshmallows.
I used to think those big hay bales you'd see in the late fall in American fields. I thought they were big marshmallows because they put the big white tarps on them.
They do. Well, they did in your childhood. In my childhood, they didn't.
What you had burlap?
No, our bales were just bales. You put them in a bale barn.
No,
you
but
didn't have plastic when I was a kid.
Well,
hadn't been invented.
Now they do the thing where they conglomerate 1 million bales into this big kind of rounded sphere thing. You know what I'm talking about? Like, and because the tarp is white, it is exactly the not the size, but the shape of an enormous marshmallow.
I know, and it's so weird because there's nothing more natural and country looking than a bunch of hay bales.
I guess haystacks just are not.
There's nothing lamer than a plastic covered hay bale. Although a haystack, have you ever actually seen a haystack?
I think maybe I haven't.
I have seen a haystack.
I slept in a haystack.
Yeah, with a single piece of straw sticking out of my mouth and my little bindle over my shoulder.
Harmonica?
So when you drive the highways, you realize that most American highways, most highways everywhere, don't actually have railings for large stretches because railings not only are obstacles in and of themselves, but the presence of railings actually seems to increase the percentage of accidents on that stretch of road.
People drive worse when there's railings?
Yes.
I wonder what the psychological effect is.
This is something that bicycling culture has increasingly come to understand. The share the roads philosophy of bicycling is partly the result of, statistically, if you put up barriers between cars and bicycles, more cars will crash into
the cars get closer to the bikes.
Yeah,
weirdly.
and there's actually more fatalities in bicyclists being crushed between the barrier that is there to protect them than if you just don't have a barrier. It increases the attentiveness of the drivers somehow.
This even comes out in helmet law advocacy, where people who oppose bicycle helmet laws point to actual results like this one, saying that the more there's safety equipment, including helmets on the drivers or the bicyclists, the worse people drive and the more incidents happen. That's kind of a telling view of human nature, right?
Pretty incredible.
Hey, that guy's got a helmet on. I can come this close. It's happening subconsciously, but apparently it is happening.
Well, by the 1920s, there were enough car accidents that were not just two guys in Model Ts crashing into each other in a Harold Lloyd movie.
Head on.
But there were actually a lot of head-on collisions of people kind of going off the road and meeting another car, or going across the center line.
Yeah.
Right. But also going off the outside line and rollovers. I mean, there were just a lot more car fatalities. And what's interesting is if you look at big highways now, a lot of attention has gone into the construction of medians both in between the, like on an interstate or an autobahn, right? Big space in between the lanes of traffic and lots of space on the outside. There are ratios of open space to tarmac that,
And is this it's
that's all designed because if there's enough space between lanes, there don't need to be guardrails, and most accidents become just a car kind of finding its way down into a muddy
and it's got to be
field.
cheaper than building a barricade, just separating out the two directions of travel.
That's right. But it requires a lot of space.
And you're avoiding head-on collision?
Avoiding head-on collisions. If you build the slope, you're reducing rollovers considerably. There's nothing to hit. If you notice, none of those medians have trees in them because they're explicitly designed to just let people run out. If they go off the road, they keep going. I'm guessing you have never dozed off while driving.
Never.
It's a terrible feeling.
I don't even fall asleep in movies.
It happens to people all the time. They just fall asleep behind the wheel and drive off the road.
I'm too inhibited.
Well, yeah.
I wish I was that comfortable in my body, John, that I could just take a nice nap behind the wheel. But no.
I think if your head nodded one time, you would immediately take action in the form of pullover and.
But people don't. People are like, "Oh, I got to shake myself awake.
Yeah.
I'm not stopping."
I'm fine.
Yeah.
In 1933, a guy by the name of Sam Gardner first patented what he called a guardrail, which was a very, very familiar thing that everybody, I think, will recognize. It's a W-shaped piece of metal, of sheet metal, pressed into a W, and then bolted to a series of wooden posts along the side of a road.
It's the quintessential guardrail you still see today.
And you do still see it today. The W rail is still a major kind of guardrail around the world. It was a revolutionary technology. We don't talk about Sam Gardner as much as we should. He doesn't really enter the history books in any profound way, other than having, like the Fender Telecaster, inventing the perfect thing on the first try.
Killing the guardrail industry by nailing it. I found when my kids and I were into geocaching, these the little indentations in the W are very common places to stick a little magnetic geocache. And so, some 30% of the world's geocaches are probably in the niche of a W rail.
Well, the W rail did a great job of reducing head-on collisions, reducing traffic rollovers from the 30s all the way through the war years. But in the 50s, there was an explosion in the number of cars on the road. Cars were bigger and more powerful, and they started to accidents started to be now a major cause of death and a very public. They're really they stand in bold relief, right?
Yeah, it's just a sign the state is failing. Like, did you see what just happened on our streets?
But that really started in California, in that part of Highway 99 that we've all been over, called the Grapevine. As you leave the kind of Bakersfield Central Valley and you head up over the mountains into Los Angeles, it's still called the Grapevine now, even though I-5 and 99 don't follow the same exact path. But the Grapevine was the highway had been straightened and gradually built so that it was a straighter and faster road, but it still had a lot of switchbacks. Mm-hmm. In fact, this is the location of the original Dead Man's Curve of our song, Murder Ballads, the Death Tracks.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we mentioned that song.
So Dead Man's Curve was a curve on Highway 99, and it was an extremely dangerous stretch of road, and a lot of the way that the guardrails on that stretch of 99 were built, it's very hard for me to picture this, but a lot of news reports at the time said that truckers would actually sidle up against the guardrail and use it to slow down.
What?
They would somehow
Is that better than braking?
they weren't using, they were also braking, but using I think it was a post and wire kind of rail rather than a.
So it's not a scrapey, but still.
Well, there's some kind of scraping going on,
Yeah,
but maybe
you wouldn't
it's
slow down.
scraping the sides of the tires. I mean, I wasn't able to find like a perfect description of how truckers were using the guardrail to slow down, but it wasn't. It was doing a lot of damage to the rail, but also it wasn't working. People were crashing in unacceptable numbers, and so.
Oh, is there an acceptable number of crashes?
Well, as a matter of fact, there are.
Tyler Durden.
So this is right after the war. California saw a need for a new kind of rail, a new kind of guardrail to keep cars from tumbling off the edge or having head-on collisions on this super dangerous stretch of road. Now, the evolution of guardrails has always been a question of expense versus safety, right? Like pretty much everything in the industry. The safest thing is the most expensive. And in, I think, most cases, highways can get away with a less safe option because there's not that much traffic, and it's not like a clogged glut of danger. It's more of is someone going to in the middle of the night fall asleep or drunkenly tumble over this embankment? Probably not. So we can just put up some chicken wire, and a bell.
A sign. A sign is cheaper than a bunch of
A
railing.
sign that says, "Please don't drive off the side of the road."
I like that sign with the truck tipping on one side. It's like it's like at 45 degrees somehow.
So the W beam style of guardrail started to evolve during this period, and a new understanding of it. Engineers understood that what they were really doing was not catching cars, but guiding cars. That a guardrail was meant to bounce off of, absorb you.
Not stop your impact in a dangerous way.
Right. And that has its own dangers because the vehicle is still moving forward at a high rate of speed and you are bouncing it back into traffic. That comes with its own trade-offs. The original sort of the original concept, I guess, of a W rail fence was what they call a strong post version, which is you really set the posts in, and they hold this W barrier that your car crashes into. The barrier itself deforms. The W absorbs some of the impact, but the strong posts keep you on the road. As time went on, a new design called the weak post design set the W barrier out on wood blocks from the posts.
Oh, I've seen those.
Yeah. And the posts were kind of meant to deform. But
they're supposed to bend back or
the posts aren't doing the work. What's doing the work is the contiguous ribbon of steel. And you'll see accidents that happen on a weak post style fence where really what it is the rail is a single piece and the blocks kind of those blocks are always wood. They're not made of metal.
And is that so they'll give?
They give, and the posts break, and the metal ribbon stretches to kind of catch, slow down, redirect. It's basically designed to fail.
Yeah.
And for a long time, the weak post model was seen as the kind of more progressive version of it, or the science-based one, until cars got bigger and heavier.
Oh, right.
And you couldn't, and this technique didn't work anymore. And so then a new version of the strong rail came, or the strong post.
I just feel like there's no tech that's going to work on a semi-truck. Like nothing's going to work for every vehicle.
Well, except all of these road barriers are designed with all of these different kinds of vehicles in mind. It has to be able to contain semi-trucks because they're the most dangerous thing on the road.
Right.
But if you build it just to contain a semi-truck, a motorcycle is going to go right underneath it. And even a Hyundai or a smaller car, if it's built too high, it's going to decapitate you going underneath it. But if it's built too low, bigger trucks are going to hit it and flip over it.
What to do?
And
all cars on the road should have to be the same height, even including the motorcycles. They have to be as tall as a semi.
Well, what happened on the Grapevine was that California came up with this design of a concrete barrier that was wider at the bottom, narrower at the top, and it had a kind of curb, like a design where, the bottom was fatter, and then a certain number, 10 inches up, 13 inches up. The original design, I think, was... that there was a kind of a breaking point at the bottom where it was shaped maybe like a Hershey's Kiss. And the idea being that a car would hit it, it's a concrete barrier, but that lower ridge would actually bounce the tire up a little bit and redirect the car into the road. So it's not just bouncing it off the fender. It actually is kind of, you can drive up the side of it a little bit. Do no damage, really, to the car.
Better for the car, and plus the tires give more than the body of the car, so it's gentler on the passengers.
And you see it even in these structures now, that there will be black tire marks where cars have bounced off of it, and presumably the way they're designed, if your bumpers don't stick out too far, you can hit them and not really glance off of them. This was a real success on the Grapevine, but California didn't take that success and run with it. They didn't say, we've invented a new thing. They just put it, and it was a very modern design.
When is this, by the way?
1946.
Okay.
Pre-built concrete barriers that they brought in and placed with cranes along this stretch of road. About a decade later, New Jersey had this same problem. There was a stretch of road on Highway 20 that was called Jugtown Mountain.
Jugtown Mountain?
Jugtown Mountain, New Jersey.
That's my favorite hobo song.
And same problem, switchbacks, cars going off the road. And New Jersey took a kind of clue from this Dead Man's Curve style concrete barrier. But New Jersey originally built it. There was no science or engineering being used. There was no research into this. It was just engineers making it up as they went.
Like working for some state highway department who were like, you know what might work and be cheap.
And the New Jersey versions originally were like, well, we just need to pour taller curbs. And so they, instead of building them separately and transporting them in, they just started building what were kind of like these Grapevine cement. They had that same profile, wider at the bottom, but the original ones were only 18 inches tall.
Oh, really?
Like just a little bit higher than a foot.
Just a rim, kind of.
And they realized that people were hitting them and it was causing people to flip. It was So they raised them, then they were 20 inches tall, then they were 2 feet tall. And it took until 1959 for them to settle on the kind of 32 inches tall standard. So that's, close to 3 feet tall.
Is that what we have today? That seems about right.
Well, so as we'll see, they have continued to evolve. But these were called Jersey barriers because they're from New Jersey. And they were kind of an immediate success. You could see statistically that the number of fatalities dropped considerably. The number of accidents didn't.
Did it go up?
It went up slightly, again, because they'd given people something to hit. And
Is this like putting the little target in the urinal? Like on some subconscious level, the human mind just wants to hit something.
Well, they see it and they feel safe.
Yeah.
And so they look over at their wife's hair or whatever, a little bit more,
right.
And the thing was that this was maybe contrary to how we would think about it now. No one was doing any research into optimality.
Like crash test dummy kind of stuff.
There was none of that.
Because, Detroit has hundreds of millions of dollars to do that kind of thing with cars, but a state agency does not.
And there was so little... This was happening at kind of a local scale, right? New Jersey was developing this of their own accord, and I guess there weren't transportation like trade magazines. Like, guess what we've discovered? You can put up a railing, and it will keep cars from going off the edge. I mean, the W railings were in use,
yeah.
But what ended up happening with guardrails, W rails, strong and weak posts both, is that they are effective, but when a car crashes into them, they're ruined. You have to come...
I was wondering when we talk about that,
Yeah.
What are the repair costs of them?
You have to repair them all the time. And the weaker the barrier, the more wrecked it is. And it does the job. It saved the car. But especially on tricky stretches of road, over the course of the lifetime of a W barrier, a W rail, it doesn't take many times that you have to go out and rebuild it that it's now more expensive than if you built something more permanent.
Yeah.
The thing about a Jersey barrier is you can hit it over and over, and the concrete is, you're going to have to really slam into it.
That's the Jersey way.
To hurt it. That's right. So there was a magazine at the time, the Engineering News Record, and they did a big feature on the Jersey barriers, and it did then popularize the idea so that more states started to adopt it as a technology. And you start to see it in Europe, you start to see it around the world, because a good idea, once it gets out into the popular imagination, people do start to look at it.
Do they still call them Jersey barriers? I didn't know that was the name.
Around the world, they're still called Jersey barriers. And it's just a kind of fun, as we'll see in a second, the naming of these things is kind of a little curious. They started to do research into the actual science of Jersey barriers in the 1960s. Both General Motors and California, the state of California, said, okay, are these as good as we can make them? Is this the design? And they started building different variations of it, different angles, different heights, different types, and running cars into them. Remote control cars, they would just shoot cars at them out of their car shooting gun, whatever GM has.
They have a car shooting gun?
And I think they did back then.
Secret car shooting gun?
GM actually designed its own version of the Jersey barrier, which they called the GM barrier. And by the mid-70s, over 19 states had adopted Jersey barriers as their technology, and another 8 states had adopted the GM barrier. The thing about the GM barrier, designed in the late 60s, was it presumed that all cars would be 5,000-pound, 25-foot-long GM monsters. And the design of the GM barrier meant that little cars, like any kind of efficiency car or non-huge American car, would hit the GM barrier and just flip.
Oh, really?
Because the dimensions of it, the break point of a Jersey barrier is about 13 inches up the side. The GM breaking point was 15 inches up, which was great for a big honker.
A big car with a big fin.
A big Bertha. But a little car is going to hit it, and it's not going to go up it. It's just going to pop it. And so by the late 70s, the GM version of a Jersey barrier was gone. But the Jersey Verge,
The Jers Verge
became like...
It was ready for the oil crisis and smaller cars and
increasingly adopted by most American states, and you see them now all around the world. Now, the W guardrail is in use all around the world too, and it's they're called various things. So the guardrail technology and Jersey barrier technology have been evolving kind of side by side, right? And there are a lot more guardrails than there are Jersey barriers because Jersey barriers are a lot more expensive. But Jersey barriers do a lot of hard work.
Jersey barriers are more expensive, huh? Just the fact that they're solid concrete without empty space,
and transporting them there, and the fact that they're...
Are aesthetics ever a concern? Are people like, these Jersey barriers are fine along a highway, which looks ugly, but the guardrails are kind of classier, right?
In all of the many conferences that are held about these things, all the statistical talk about it, it very definitely never accounts for it being aesthetically pleasing. Although if you look at the guardrails that were built during the Works Progress administration, a lot of them are, the kind of stuff you see in national parks still. They're very
elaborate
and they're kind of beautiful,
Yeah.
right? Individual highway engineers discovered that if you took Jersey barriers but then covered them with a little bit of white cement over the top of it, like a Portland cement because you take those Jersey barriers and you actually kind of connect them and fill in with a layer of concrete.
Yep.
If you use white Portland cement, all of a sudden they kind of glow at night. They're much more attractive. And that was an innovation that some highway engineer came up with that on the spot, and
Probably hard to keep clean.
harder to keep clean, but as you say, much more attractive.
Yeah.
And you see Jersey barriers used in a lot of different ways. The U.S. Army uses them a lot to create barriers in front of embassies and to just, I think during the Iraq War, they were putting these Jersey barriers everywhere just to screw up traffic.
When you're worried about suicide drivers, you don't really care so much about the abrupt halt.
Right.
That's when you got the metal posts coming out of the ground and the tech changes.
When you put them in as infrastructure that is going to be there for years
for everybody.
Yeah, you can make them a lot prettier. The evolution of the Jersey barrier shape has gone through a couple of different iterations, and at one point it was decided that although the dimensions of the original Jersey barrier were surprisingly accurate, right? It was like the angle of the top of the barrier was 84 degrees and the angle of the bottom of the barrier was 55 degrees.
And it turns out somebody just kind of eyeballing it actually was very close to the right model all along. That's good.
But the newer version kind of gave it a different slope of attack from it was they're always trying to figure out with modern cars what's the best way to get that tire up and direct the car back into the road.
Yeah.
The new design was called the F-shape barrier, not because it's shaped like an F unlike the W-shape railing, which is shaped like a W,
which is not shaped like an F, but is shaped like a W.
the F-shaped barrier is called the F-shaped barrier because they tried out barriers A, B, C, D, E, and then the one they chose was like, oh, well, the F is the one we're going with, and
That
they
shouldn't
call
be
it
called the F.
F-shape.
Maybe you could say Plan F. I don't think you can call it the F shape.
F-shape is
What does it look like?
It just looks exactly like a Jersey barrier. You see them all the time.
It's a very slight modification.
In the late 60s, Canada did their own tests and determined that although I think the break point of the F shape is only 10 inches up instead of 13. This is very small beer, but
They like
everybody's
their
got their
results better.
their own theory. In Canada, they decided that they were going to build their own version of it, which was 42 inches tall instead of
quite a
32
bit
inches
taller.
tall. And they called that the Ontario Tall Wall. And the Ontario Tall Wall, they built this in the late 60s, but now it's a real it's part of the Canadian.
It's probably
highways.
on a Canadian coin or stamp.
Yeah, that's right. The Tall Wall. The Tall Wall does a much better job of not only dealing with the larger trucks and SUVs of our contemporary times, but also it blocks headlight glare.
Ooh.
Going around corners a lot better, and more places are now starting to adopt the Ontario Tall Wall.
Well, headlights are getting worse and worse for sure. You get blinded now by bad headlight tech all the time.
Right, and the headlight tech just gets worse and worse, while the Ontario Tall Wall just gets better and better.
Good job, Ontario.
So now we're living in a world where I was inspired to do this the other day because I saw a car had wrecked into one of the guardrails close by my house, and it had clearly hit this guardrail at speed. The guardrail was built according to the new version of the strong post, which was the old versions. They bolted the sections of W rail at the posts
Yeah.
onto those wood blocks, but the new system of strong post W beam guardrail is that they bolt the metal together in between the rails, so that it doesn't, the post isn't a fulcrum that will break, that the rail will deform against and break at the joint.
Yeah.
Now the whole system kind of works as you could see it in this car wreck. The thing was demolished, but the rail held, and it was all.
We're now privileging the
out.
rail above the car.
Well, and who knows what happened to the car, but it clearly didn't flip over into the trees and fall down the hill, right? It was probably really damaged, but no fatalities.
Speaking of the aesthetics of Jersey barriers,
Yes.
There can be individual modifications. You mentioned the white Portland cement. I realized as you were saying that there are prominent Jersey barriers in my neighborhood because I live near a place where an arterial bends a bit, which meant that every couple of weeks, but every couple of years, somebody would just go plowing into the front of a Starbucks there because it's located where the road jogs.
Right.
It's no longer a Starbucks; it's a brewery of some kind. But finally, after replacing their window for the third time, the Starbucks put up Jersey barriers on the length of the frontage of that building and hired a local muralist to paint, pandas and whatnot. And so we now have a beautiful, bougie Jersey barrier protecting our brewery and burger eaters from harm.
Isn't that nice?
But they are, now that I look at it, those are canonical Jersey barriers. Do they sometimes make them out of other stuff? Aren't there like plastic ones now?
Well, so increasingly there are. There was not there wasn't a full study of the effectiveness of any of this stuff until as late as 1993. A report that studied all of the different designs came out called Report 350, and people still refer to Report 350, and all of the barriers that get made have to conform to what are called Report 350 standards. And Report 350, like the 350 standards are the minimum standards for guardrails. You can overbuild for them.
But this is like generally U.S. safety baseline now?
Yeah, and in Europe and other countries, they have a different name for this standard, but it's a very similar set of standards. There was a meeting along with, in response to Report 350, not until 2009 did guardrail standards get kind of systematized. There was something called the Midwest Guardrail System, NGS, which is, as we discussed, kind of talking about the guardrail as a complete system. And part of that was that guardrails need, for them to properly work, they need to be anchored at either end. And there's engineering about how long they should be. They're typically between 60 and 75 feet long, anchored at the ends, and the whole system works, as kind of a giant leaf spring or something, like a...
It's got give, but
give.
Not at the anchors.
And the problem with the anchors, of course, was those end pieces people would often hit them.
Right.
And that would be a source of real fatality. You'd crash into them. So then the end pieces now are extensively designed to deform in a different way and still perform the anchoring job, but also crush and
Well, this is usually temporary construction barriers, but have you seen the thing where those dangerous endpoints often have water barrels in front of them?
Well, so that's not just temporary. Those are used...
Are those at all off-ramps?
Those are used all across the world. And what's funny about those water barrels is they're not full of water.
They're not?
No, because
What's cheaper than water?
Water would freeze,
right.
and they would be super deadly. So they're full of magnesium chloride or sand or a combination. But what's funny is you see
magnesium chloride a liquid, or it's a powder like sand?
In that sense, it's a liquid.
Okay, so it's like they added it to water.
Yeah.
It's like the stuff you put on roads to keep.
Right.
It's ice melt stuff in water. Okay.
What's cool is that when you see them arranged in like a triangle in front of big, abutments or whatever, the first few rows are hardly filled at all. The one at the end is almost empty.
So it slows you down gradually.
Yeah, and then there's more and more magnesium chloride in it, and it's meant to absorb the deceleration. But you said these plastic barriers now are they're much cheaper to move and put in place because they're hollow and they're empty when they put them in place. And then once they're there, they can fill them either with sand,
is that what you
magnesium
do?
chloride.
You weight them at the time.
You weight them once you get, and you can weight them, specific to their needs. Do you want them to move? Do you want them to be solid? A lot of those end caps of guardrails and of Jersey barriers, the things that are meant to deform so that people don't crash into the end and kill themselves, are designed around an idea called the sequentially kinking terminal. So they have a structure that's a kink. It's basically kinking, and it kinks sequentially,
like bending in on itself.
Yeah, it just kind of
packs,
breaks,
compresses
at an increasingly like firm rate. It's either about guiding or decelerating cars. In 2014, there was a new manual called the Manual for Assessing Safety Hardware, or MASH. And everyone now in the United States is designing their safety barriers to be in conformity with the MASH standards. But Texas has kind of gone off on their own and have recently been experimenting with reverse slope Jersey barriers that actually push.
They're wider at the top?
They're wider at the top.
Oh, okay. What
Because,
does that do?
Well, Texas was concerned that cars were, particularly in areas where workmen were, cars were hitting the barriers, going up, and had a potential to flip and hit workmen.
Okay.
And so the reverse incline barriers are designed to actually push cars down. They hit it and it pushes their nose not up, but down and kind of grounds them out, I guess.
Yes, yeah. If it's pushing you into the ground, it'll increase the friction and slow you down that way.
But the problem is that although innovation continues, the innovation has not made such a case for itself that the Ontario tall wall or even the F shape are like dramatic improvements on the technology enough that all of the manufacturing infrastructure to make Jersey barriers it's still the standard and no one has changed their machining.
Yeah.
So we're still churning out classic Jersey curbs that remains the global standard.
And it's not just inertia; they're also still pretty good. Apparently,
they work great.
Minor modifications, but just guys kind of using their best horse sense. Going on intuition instead of mathematical modeling and CAD rendering. They actually got it pretty much right the first time.
I mean, in Europe right now, there are a lot of Swiss and Dutch engineering companies that keep coming out with new designs and calling them Andromeda and whatnot, and saying like, oh, this is going to put the Jersey barrier out to pasture because this new system we've developed that's 3D printed out of honeycomb fiber is going to
0.2% better.
Yeah, 0.2% better. But for the foreseeable future, when your car is headed off the road, you're going to either encounter a W rail that's meant to lasso you in, or a Jersey barrier that's meant to bounce you off.
I wonder if you could compute the number of lives saved by the W rail and the Jersey barrier. I mean, I'm sure the companies would like that exercise as a PR maneuver.
Well, Report 350 said that the Jersey barrier had reduced fatalities by 43%.
And in a world with hundreds of thousands of car accidents, that's hundreds of thousands of lives. If it's millions of incidents, it's millions of lives.
Report 350 also said that it had increased car accidents by something like 6%.
So they didn't die.
But, it increased car accidents only because it gave cars something to hit.
Now I want to know who the most famous person is to have their life saved by a Jersey barrier. We're acting like all lives are equally important when we cite numbers like that. But is Willie Nelson alive today because of a Jersey barrier?
James Dean died before Jersey barriers were a thing, right? Although on that stretch of road, there wouldn't have been any.
Would Jane Mansfield have a head today? I mean, you don't want to think about the people who died in the car crashes. You want to think about people who lived and would not have. We don't even know about the scare behind the wheel that could have killed Dustin Hoffman if not for a Jersey barrier in just the right place. We may never know.
Well, apparently Tiger Woods was in a terrible car accident.
I remember it was a rollover, right?
And but it seems like he flipped down an embankment.
Yeah.
So the Jersey barrier did not save him. There are a lot of celebrities here on this list of celebrity car crashes that I've never heard of. In fact, I'm 5 down, and the only one I've heard of was Tiger Woods. Oh, wait, Kanye, I guess, serious car crash.
Well, celebrities are disproportionately getting into car crashes because, as we implied, all the bad decision-making.
It says here that he fell asleep behind the wheel, which kind of figures. Sharon Stone, I guess, scary car crash. It seems like none of these people were protected by Jersey barriers.
Well, you don't know. Like the time the Jersey barrier saves you from death, it was probably just a little pa-dum. Oh, whew, thank goodness.
Right.
Right.
Oh, off we go.
And then that person can grow up to be president.
I'm somebody that if I see a drunk driver on the road, I'm not afraid to tell y'all.
Will you make a citizen's arrest?
That I am a snitch about drunk drivers. And so I have called the state troopers a few times on drunk drivers, and I did so on a drunk driver once. and was following him on the freeway, even though the woman who answered the phone said, "Whatever you do, don't follow this person." I was like, I'm not.
Got it.
I'm not. And he hit the Jersey barrier, and it pushed him across 5 lanes of freeway. He hit it with his left fender.
Yeah.
He ricocheted all the way across the freeway and came to rest on the Jersey barrier on the other side of the freeway.
The full Jersey.
And didn't hit any cars in between, got out, walked back. I mean, his car had some dents in it, but he was going 80 miles an hour and impacted 2 walls and didn't even, I mean, he was too drunk to even realize, I think, that he had made contact. It was incredible. I was so impressed with the way the system worked. I mean, if there had been a car in the wrong place, he would have careened into it and it would have been a disaster.
But it's hard to imagine the barrier that could account for that. So
that's the problem, right? It's still, any barrier is still an obstacle.
And that concludes Jersey barriers. Entry 671.IS5714, certificate number 40991 in the omnibus. Futurelings, please don't look for us on social media. Don't go to @Omnibus Project or @Ken Jennings or @John Roderick under any circumstances. You can email us, I guess, at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. It gives us material for our monthly addenda shows that Patreon listeners can enjoy. Somebody sent us an email suggesting, hey, you should have talked about this more in a past entry. And I said, oh, that's actually a good point. I think I was going to and then never circled back, and we'll do it in the addenda show. Mm-hmm. And within an hour, she had signed up for the Patreon, so she could hear that.
Hey, well done.
I just need to start emailing every listener individually and saying,
hello.
Look, you've probably made some good decisions in your life.
If you took the time to write us, you already care enough to pay $5 a month.
Not subscribing to our Patreon is maybe just an exception for you, but you should really look into it. So please go to patreon.com/omnibus project. You don't want to miss out on that parallel universe of amazing omnibus merriment that's going on there. You could also send us physical items to P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. Send us perfumed notes and whatnot. I still got a bunch of postcards here. Rebecca, I had to peel off the little sticker because I couldn't see the signature. Rebecca from Chicago thanks us for Omnibus. In 2023, she enjoyed the Pupfish. She enjoyed Saul's Ants and the Sarajevo Haggadah. So that's 2 for you, 1 for me. I think you win. Mm-hmm. And wishes we would do a show on jock jams. Yeah, why not?
Jock jams.
Should we do it right now? Should we begin the jock jam show right now?
Are they talking about jams like shorts?
They are not. Yeah, you put on your jock, and then you put on some jams, and you're ready to hit the beach. I don't know why you're wearing a jock. Let me see. Here's a vintage Trivial Pursuit postcard from Carla.
Cool.
This is very cool. It says, to prepare for the millennium, stock up on canned goods. Apparently in the year 2000, as a Y2K tie-in, which actually would have seemed like very poor taste if planes had actually fallen from the sky. But Trivial Pursuit did a Y2K tie-in and put in a kind of a survivalist millennium game in a metal tin. Huh. And then said, if your computers are still working, check out www.trivialpursuit.com.
Right on.
And luckily the planes did not fall from the sky, so we're okay. I was on a plane the other day watching a movie, and I did not understand the ending. And I finally had to Google what was going on, and they're like, it turns out that was the place where planes started to fall from the sky in the movie, and they couldn't show this on an in-flight movie. So they just kind of edited it in a very confusing way.
Was that movie Until the End of the World with John Hurt?
It was not.
Oh.
I don't want to give away what it was because it gives away the end of the movie, because planes are going to start falling from the sky, but don't watch it at 30,000 feet is what I'm saying. The Center for Land Use Interpretation wants us to know about their new display about California's Tulare Lake.
Love it.
Sure, why not? Somebody actually sent us a picture, I think on the Facebook page. Look for the Futurelings on Facebook of they tried to visit the actual, what's it called? The Center for Land Use Interpretation, but they got there right after closing time.
Oh, womp womp.
They're on Venice for no reason. Haley, who has beautiful handwriting, has been listening to Omnibus since I mentioned them during the Jeopardy goat tournament, but she was already a Death Cab fan, and so that was her connection with you, John. She saw me speak in Grand Rapids. Does that mean I was in Grand Rapids?
At some point, I bet you were.
It seems to imply that I was. And then maybe took a selfie with you?
In Grand Rapids? It's been a long time.
John has an edited version of that selfie in his Insta DMs. Oh, it must be a picture with me that she then sent to you. That's the last thing you want. Randos taking pictures with me.
Great.
Oh, good. I'll just put this
There's
with
Ken
with
again.
Glenn sent us a postcard from Bremerton,
You could have just brought it over.
which he found in Bellingham. He went all the way to Bellingham to get us this postcard of Bremerton. He says you know what made him a Patreon supporter?
What?
Millennial guilt over Napster.
Yay!
All the Limp Bizkit albums he downloaded on Napster make him feel bad.
That's the thing. I'm always telling that story. Did you get my music for free, you jerk? Jerks.
Jerked. Do they have a T?
Jerks.
Somebody said tzatziki or something for tzatziki on Jeopardy the other night, and people yelled at me for accepting it. I was too lenient.
You mean what should you have said? Satsuko?
No, I should have said no. Like they said tatsiki or tzatziki or something, and
What
I
did
said,
you say?
"Yeah, sure."
What should you have said?
No.
And then what would you have said? What's the correct pronunciation?
I think they maybe missed the tsa in one or two of the places where it appears.
Oh my goodness.
You
should have
We're
said.
very strict. We're very strict on Jeopardy.
But I mean, you wouldn't have denied them the point.
Well, yes, that's what I mean by strict.
Whoa.
Strict is not making someone feel bad. Strict is saying, no, the answer is Tenok Titlan, and you said Tenot Chitlan, and that's the wrong order.
If I said Tenochtitlan, you would tell me I got it wrong, and then somebody else would go, it's Tenochtitlan.
I would take Tenochtitlan, I think.
Yeah?
I think. But I have judges backing me up. I don't have to I'm not alone on any of this stuff.
Right.
We had 3 people say Solzhenitsyn wrong the other night, and
Solzhenitsyn is what I would say.
I would take that.
Okay.
But they left out something. The L, syllables out of order. Solzhenitsyn.
Oh my goodness.
It has to be a plausible pronunciation
This
of the
show is
correct
tough.
spelling.
I should start watching Jeopardy. It sounds like a blood sport.
This is supposed to be an ad for Omnibus, and it turned into an ad for Jeopardy.
No, don't watch Jeopardy.
Check
Watch
local
Omnibus.
Let's see. Matt says he was. Oh, here's another belated Christmas card. But he also snuck in a 20.
What?
How are you and I going to split this? You were saying you couldn't afford a laptop, and now look at this. A crisp, folded $20 bill. Matt knows how to get his letter opened.
Well, I mean, I think I have a 10 here.
I might have I think I have a couple.
Here.
Now that the only reason I have money is to tip people, all I ever have is 5.
That's pretty good. I'm glad you're tipping people $5.
I'm a good tipper.
All right, here. I've got $10 right here.
Well, there you go. I'll trade you. Because I need those 5s.
Yeah, there you go. I never tip anybody.
Why should you?
I never tip anybody because I don't travel anymore.
You go to Europe where nobody tips anybody.
Exactly.
Matt said that the omnibus entry on Masquerade, the British puzzle book of the early 80s, I think, inspired him to make their family Christmas letter a puzzle. And he sent it to us. It's some kind of it's what all his family members are up to this year, but apparently it conceals a puzzle.
Huh.
Should we maybe
Should we try and solve his puzzle? You're the puzzle solver.
How long is this entry? right now.
We're at 113. It was our last one was 130.
We got like 20 minutes to work on this. All right. No, maybe I should put a photo of it on the Patreon so that subscribers can try to solve the puzzle of the Simmons family Christmas letter. And then I think this is the guy that sent us a Christmas ornament last year. I believe it was some kind of it was a Christmas tree cut out of a computer card, so it had microprocessors and lights mounted on it, and it would twinkle. Did you make 2? Did you get one of these?
I don't think so.
We have one on our tree this year. This year, let me see. This one has a new song and a secret message.
Oh, that's nice.
And it's sound reactive, so it's candy cane Christmas ornaments made by Stefan. Thank you, Stefan. They say Merry Xmas 2023. What happens if I turn the power switch on? Okay, the light's turned on. So now it's a gleaming candy cane.
Oh, that's nice.
But if I press the mode button, it looks like it can do... What will it do? Is that dimmer?
Oh,
Yeah.
it is.
Oh, it turned off the white.
Goes, lighter to lighter.
Oh, now it's creeping around the candy cane. Nothing better than a podcaster describing the lights on a Christmas ornament.
In March.
This is fun. There is a little microphone at the bottom that will respond to noise in one of the modes.
Oh.
Don't worry, it's incapable of recording your voice. Stefan's afraid that we will think that
sure.
he's collecting data about us.
That's what they all say.
Hello? Okay, it's not that mode.
Didn't respond to your voice.
Merry Christmas. Do I have to say something? Grinch. My lips bleeding, Clarence.
It's just doing the same thing.
So far, nothing.
It's absolutely conducting your voice over to his special...
He's listening right now in his bat cave. Stefan, what do we have to say? Hello? I don't know. Well, I'm gonna have to play with this on my own time.
Caw.
But I'm very excited. The battery should last about 12 hours on the brightest mode. Oh, it's a AAA. You could replace it. This is a feat of engineering. Stefan and I look forward to decoding all its secrets. Here's yours, John. There's 2. For next year's Christmas tree. Thank you so much. And remember to check out patreon.com/omnibus project.
Whew. Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. But if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we wish you many goods and cheese and hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.